There's a
Tens
few
of
a
thousands.
lot more. So you might see half a dozen people in the audience. I hope that doesn't hurt too much.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, I'll give a quick introduction and then we'll get right into it. Cool,
Yeah.
awesome, man. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the number one show for athletes looking to gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. I'm your host, Kenny Dusseault, and today we are here with one of my athletes, John Moore, coming off of his third pro MMA win just, I guess, 2 weekends ago now.
That was last weekend,
Last
surprisingly.
weekend. This,
Yeah.
this has been a long week. Just last weekend. So, John, first, want to say thank you. I appreciate you coming on. And yeah, how you doing?
Great. Yeah. It's interesting to be on here. It's fun. Yeah, it's crazy that it was last weekend already. It feels like it's a month ago, and it's yeah. Maybe it's all the
Probably
food I've
yes.
been eating.
I mean, that's got to be part of it for
Yeah.
sure. And I mean, probably has something to do with the fact that, you came out completely unscathed. So you feel about as recovered as you usually do a month after a fight.
Yeah. Probably part of
Awesome.
it.
So yeah, let's get right into it. First off, I wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about yourself, like coming up in MMA. When did you start? What made you fall in love with it? Because I know, like, from working with you, you're one of the most dedicated guys coming up. Absolutely, like, it's always awesome from a coach's perspective. But basically, what went into building the John Moore that we see in front of us today?
Well, I started doing more traditional martial arts when I was a young teenager, and I did that for quite a long time, 5 or 6 years, and then I kind of just one day I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I just kind of fell in love with that and competing in Jiu-Jitsu tournaments. And then I'd always kind of talk to people about how I wanted to fight MMA at some point. And then one day, someone's like, "Do you want to fight next week?" And after that, then it's kind of how it started. So I had my first 4 amateur fights only doing Jiu-Jitsu. Then after I fought someone, I fought Eric Stevens at nationals, and I lost a split decision to him. And then right after that, I asked his coach, Brad Cardinal, if I could come train with them. And then the next week, I started training with them, and that was really the biggest change for me, was actually training at an MMA gym with MMA people and coaches, fighters. That was the biggest change, because I was anybody that saw my first initial fights, as soon as they saw my next fight, I had people messaging me being like, "Wow, that didn't suck. You actually looked really good there." So yeah, and now Brad's gym shut down a year and a bit ago now, and I'm at Dunamis and Kodokan, and that's been almost an equal change in my abilities, from going from not training at all to training with Brad, and now training with more high level people like Jake and Randy and all the other people on the pro team there. And yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, I just want to reinforce the fact that it was 4 fights before you did any striking.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I had like, some traditional martial arts background, like I did some taekwondo, but as far as like I didn't have anybody, I probably sparred twice in the duration of 4 fights. There was no one to train with, and
yeah. So, I
so
mean, I got to ask, like, just coming into those first couple, like coming into your first MMA fight, like you have like a week's notice, you haven't been training MMA, you've just been doing jiu-jitsu. Like, what's going through your head through that whole week, but then like the actual day of the fight? Like, is there that feeling of like, what did I just get myself into? Like, was it pretty calm?
definitely
Like,
some. I think I was a little overconfident in my abilities, because I was, winning jujitsu tournaments and choking people
that's the
out,
same.
and then I was like, I'm gonna go in there and smoke this guy, and then I got beat up for 3 rounds. Yeah, so, but definitely confidence was. Oh, not sure what happened there. Uh, yeah, the confidence was probably a little higher than it should have been on my first one, and then it didn't help that in my second fight I knocked the guy out in 20 seconds. So I was like, well, I clearly got
Well,
things down here.
yeah, clearly I know what I'm doing, so I
Yeah.
just can keep playing on my own. Like, yeah. So I mean, like, confidence probably a little higher than it should have been. But like coming into the second one, like, are you still feeling confident after losing the first fight? Are you thinking,
Yeah,
hey, maybe I could hit up an MMA coach sometime? Like, what's what's going through your head at
I
that
think
point?
at the time I was thinking about, a few different gyms, but I didn't really know anyone outside of jujitsu people, so I didn't really know what gym to go to, and I heard some different things about some different gyms around that kind of kept me from going to them, and which I guess in the long run, cons- the places that I ended up at, it's probably best that I didn't go to these other gyms that I'd heard things about. So
Yeah, man, fair enough. I mean, everything happens for a reason, and like from working with you now, it's clearly putting you on a good path. So it's just like it always makes me laugh that you didn't have like an actual MMA gym for your first four
yeah,
fights, but it's just like it's clearly working out well. I don't know what is going on with your screen
yeah.
right now. It is trippy to say the least. All right, and then coming into all of that, we all good?
Uh, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, you just looked like you
Oh,
froze for a second, but I
oh.
think we're back. I think we're all right. But yeah, coming off of that, like when it came to MMA and training and all that, when was the time where you sort of thought, okay, first maybe I can do something with this, and then like maybe I can actually turn pro and maybe this can be a career now.
hmm I think that was always kind of in the back of my mind because I didn't really want to work a normal job for the rest of my life. So pretty early on, I was like, I wanna be able to do this. Um, Definitely at the time, I wasn't even close to being ready to do that. Uh, but yeah, the definitely after after I had my last amateur fight, and there was everything with COVID, and that was a slow time for fighting. But after I had my last amateur fight, I felt like I was like, this is it. I'm ready to go pro now, and I had a lot of confidence because I lost a couple amateur fights and then I won my last one, and then I was just like, yeah, I'm ready to go now. So and now I'm 3-0. So
So I mean, it was clearly the right decision.
yeah,
Um, but on that note too, because that's one thing. Like obviously, MMA is a little weird with like you can just put your hand up and go pro. Like you don't have to like have a certain amount of experience or anything like that. If you had to give advice to a fighter coming up, what was it that kind of flipped the switch for you to be like, okay, I'm actually ready now versus like that overconfident younger self? Like, what could people kind of turn to say, like, is this my ego talking or am I actually ready to go?
hmm definitely a big part of it is the people around you, the things you're willing to do. If you're, willing to go to the gym 3 times a week for an hour, you're probably not ready to go pro. But if you got people like you, or even I work with TJ, nutritionist, then stuff like that is pretty much an essential because you may think you know what you're doing, but you probably don't, and you probably suck at it. You probably can't work out very well. Your nutrition is probably unseasoned chicken and no carbs, and that sucks. And you don't need to do that.
That's super crucial. I love that you said the people around you. Obviously, being one of the people around you, that always makes me feel good. But like beyond that, that's such a huge part of it for me. Something that I always try to preach with athletes that it's like yeah, I understand there's always going to be the reasons of like, oh, money's tight, or like, oh, my schedule's super busy. So like I can't do extra training, or, yeah, I can't meal prep or whatever crap they want to try to say. But it's like those things just aren't optional. Like you
Yeah,
can't make it far without doing this stuff. Right. And it's like I love that you put the shine on TJ too, because I see so many athletes that like, oh well, I don't eat carbs because carbs are bad. And it's like, no, carbs actually are like your main source of energy while
yeah,
you
no,
train.
those guys suck. Like working, even when I was working with you before I started working with TJ, I had a great gas tank, but when it came time to cut weight and rehydrate, I just wasn't able to properly rehydrate my body and refuel. So I, step in the cage and you're like, man, I felt great yesterday, but today I'm just depleted. And then you work with people like yourself and you get a great gas tank, and then you work with someone like TJ and you can actually refuel that gas tank, and then you're actually able to perform when it really matters, because it doesn't matter how good you feel in the gym if you just can't fight.
Yeah, man, that's exactly it, right? And like something that, so many guys, I think a lot of like what I see a lot too is like guys that have done it however many times on their own, and in their head, that's just how you feel when you fight. But like I remember you telling me the first time working with me and then the first time working with TJ. And I remember after, I'm pretty sure it was the pro debut where like you came in, and I mean, even after breaking your hand in that fight and everything too, but like you came to me after and you were like, man, I didn't think it was possible to feel this good on a fight
Yeah.
day.
The first time I worked with TJ, I did a shakeout in the afternoon before the fights, and I was actually surprised because I'd never felt anywhere near this good leading up to a fight. Like I always felt like I just cut weight, and I just, starved yourself all week to make weight before you cut water. And then I showed up for a shakeout, and I was like, my goodness, I feel amazing. Like just everything firing, and you're just ready to go. If you're not feeling like that, then it puts so much doubt in your mind. If you feel like you're gassed out warming up in the back, and you're gonna feel like you're just gonna be so concerned about gassing out in the fight that you're not gonna be able to do the things you need to do to put your opponent away or even just make it the distance.
Yeah, man. And I really like that you said that too, because like that's one thing that I hear from a lot of athletes when they start putting the proper pieces in place. It's just confidence. Like it's not, some crazy drastic change, but it's just going into fight day knowing I'm good. Like if I've got to grapple a lot, fine. If I got to strike, fine. If I got to go from one to the other, fine. Like wherever the fight takes me, I've got the gas to do it. And it's like
Hmm.
having that confidence in the back of your mind is just a game changer.
Yeah, for sure.
And then when it comes to, like now that we've talked a little bit about, the proper pieces in place to talk me through, like what your training looked like before we started working together. Like I know you were already pretty strong when you came in. So I know you were lifting some weights and doing some of that kind of stuff before. So can you talk me through like just what that kind of looked like to you, the routines and stuff that you would sort of put together for yourself? And then we'll go through kind of what's changed and how that's affected the fights too.
Yeah. I was probably going to the gym probably three or 4 days a week, morning or evening, whenever I could get in there. And it wasn't fully on like that bodybuilder mindset of working out where you just, bench, squat, and that's about it. Make sure you get your bicep curls in. But
Oh yeah.
I was trying to, see there's a lot of content on YouTube that it's going to improve your knowledge somewhat. But the things I was doing were just some of the same stuff we do now, but in the wrong ways, the wrong time, overdoing it, underdoing other things, and just kind of a bro mentality of working out where you're like, I gotta feel like I just worked out, otherwise it doesn't matter. Like if I didn't work out harder than last time, I didn't make any gains, and it shouldn't even have come today. And just trying to working too hard when you can just work pretty easily, actually.
Yeah, and we all know that, training with me, I just like to make people not work very hard. So
That's why I'm there.
yeah, the lazy gang. But yeah, and like one thing I like what you said, I like about what you said there was, maybe just doing things the wrong way, but also doing things at the wrong time. Because I think that's a piece that a lot of athletes don't understand. That like you're training in the off season and you're training when you have a fight and you're training when you're in the last few weeks of a fight have to be different, right? It's like
Hmm.
if you're just doing the same thing the whole way through, it's like you said, it's going to improve your knowledge and improve somewhat, but it's just not going to give you that same change that obviously I know we've been able to get with you. Can you talk me through like even just the first camp, like the first one we worked together for was your last amateur fight, right?
Yeah.
Against Matt.
Yeah.
We got to like even just that first one, and obviously, we've been able to do more and more and more since then. What did you kind of feel like were the changes as far as like what we were doing in the gym and just like how you felt in like the actual MMA training compared to, coming into previous fights?
hmm But definitely, I think one of the biggest things I noticed when I started with you, and it was something like if I was telling people to come train with you, this was the big thing I would say is I feel like I am working out to be a better athlete. I'm not just working out to get in shape. Like I'm not showing up and you're just like, here, let's go hard for a while. It was like the things we were doing, I noticed immediately when it came to my training that it wasn't necessarily that I felt way stronger. I just felt way kind of steadier almost. Like I just felt like I was becoming an athlete in my physical abilities, where it's not just, can you pick up the guy you're sparring against and throw him around, but can you do your technique better and you're not getting tired. Your body is just able to actually fire all cylinders and perform rather than just being strong and feeling like, you can beat up the white belt at your gym. Like, yeah, who cares? But how is your body performing? How do you feel when you're going to the gym? Like, aside, because if your strength training is impeding on your MMA training or whatever other training you're doing, then that's as far as it goes. That's your strength training is kind of level two, and MMA is priority number one. So if it's taking away from that, then what's the point? But I never felt like that when we started. It just felt like I was in every aspect of physical conditioning that I was just getting better. Even like there's so much stuff that we do that is kind of, jumping or directional changes that you wouldn't, it's not really, most people wouldn't think that that has a lot to do with fighting and getting in shape for a fight, but just back to just feeling more like an athlete when you're training and
Yeah.
just not just being in shape, but being in athletic shape and able to, you know, hit box jumps and float at the top and just, yeah.
Yeah, man, I get what you're saying for sure. Like, it's just, again, like I've said it to you 1,000 times before, and I've said it on this show before too, but it's like there's a difference between being in shape and being in fight shape. And
hmm
like, I love what you said too about like priority number one, obviously, is MMA training. Because I see athletes go a few different ways with that, right? Like, first off, they'll overdo it on their strength training, which then takes away from the MMA training. And then we're not getting the results we want. Or the other way that
hmm
I see a lot of athletes go, which to me is even worse, but either one's pretty terrible, is the other way I see them go is they just neglect strength training overall. They just don't do it because they're like, well, when I lift weights, I'm tired and I'm not as good with MMA. Which, like, I understand obviously that first thought process because, like you said, MMA training is priority number one. If you're not improving in the sport, you can be the greatest athlete in the world. But if I have no ability to, understand the sport itself, anybody's just going to walk in there, find that one shot, and put me out, right?
hmm
And it's like, what? And so, as far as, because that's something I always strive for as a coach too, is to make sure that the training we're doing doesn't negatively impact the MMA work, which is always the jokes that, I'm always making with you in the gym about like, yeah, we just don't work very hard because that's
hmm
obviously the way that it gets perceived whenever I talk about it online, which always makes me laugh. But can you talk me through, we obviously train twice a week, which isn't, a crazy amount or anything like that, but you're super consistent. And anybody who trains with you can attest to the fact that you're freaking strong and hard to deal with. And can you talk me through just like balancing the work that we do and balancing obviously a heavy MMA session? Like, how do you feel through the week? Obviously, there are still days that are going to be tough, but how do you feel you can manage that during the week overall?
hmm Well, I don't feel that it really, like, I rarely have a day where I'm like, man, I wish I didn't go to Kenny's last night. I'm just totally worn out today. It's just if you get the rest you need, and you take the supplements and nutrition that is going to help you recover, then it really doesn't matter. On one of our days, I have MMA right before it, and I'll show up and I'm like, you can feel a little burnt out, but it's once again, it's not. I'm not showing up there, and you're working me so hard that I can barely drive home. I'm so tired. Um, it's specific training. It's not just to burn me out. It's to improve. And I know there's days where I show up. I'll say I'm feeling tired or feeling burnt out, and you just be like, yeah, let's just lighten the weights a little bit today. We don't need to burn you out. If you're feeling tired, take it easy. You don't, it's not about who can work the hardest, it's who can work the smartest and show up the next day. If you work so hard that you have to take 2 days off like 3 times a month, then what's the point in working that hard? Just take it easy.
I love it because this is the exact conversation that gets so much hate, but it's just so true, and it's something that it's like anybody who's smart enough to open their mind to that is going to see so much success. And like I want to bring up something that I know you've said to me a couple of times too, that like there are days during training camps and stuff like that that you feel like you're not doing enough, but obviously, like you said, you always feel awesome when you're actually fighting, and you always feel awesome when you're training, which like we both know is what's important. But when you're
Mhm.
having those feelings, when you're having those days, first, like, is there anything that you feel brings that on? And second, like, what do you say to yourself, or what do you do to kind of keep sticking to the process? Because you do a very good job of that, of like not coming in and being like, hey, I went for a 20-kilometer run because I felt like I had to. Like,
Yeah. No, I hardly even run anymore. It's pretty great. As much as I love to run, I almost never do it because takes such a toll on my body for recovery. But with when you have those thoughts of not working hard enough, I just, you show up for sparring, and if you feel great, you go, however many rounds, maybe you're doing 10 rounds, you spar 10 rounds and you feel good, you're doing enough. You know that if you have to spar 10 rounds and you're taking 3, 4 rounds off, unless you're at the very beginning of camp, or maybe you're just out of camp and you're just taking it easy, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're able to fight hard, fight smart, and not just make it through the rounds, but be intelligent and sharp through 10 rounds, you just got to remind yourself that you are working hard. And sometimes it's not how you feel physically when you're leaving the gym that's going to determine if you're working hard. It's showing up 5, 6 days a week. Then you know that you're working hard.
yeah, man, because I mean, that's like, I love that you put it that way because that's exactly, I know, like what we've talked about a lot, which is like keeping your focus on what actually matters. And what actually matters is how you feel when you've got the gloves on. Like,
Hmm.
if you're stepping into the ring and you feel like crap, then yeah, okay, something's wrong and we got to fix it. It's like, but if you're stepping into the ring you guys spar Saturdays, like if you're stepping into the ring every Saturday and you feel great, and we're continuing to see improvements in the work that we're doing, your pace is improving, your strength, your power, your speed, and everything keeps improving. There's no reason to make the last 4 weeks of camp hell just to make them hell. Like,
Hmm.
it's gonna, if anything, burn you out and make you feel worse compared to what we're trying to do, which is always just build you so that the last day, fight day, is the one where you actually feel the best.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard to tell people that, and it's even hard to understand that yourself, about how it's not every day leading up to a fight needs to be harder than before. And then, you're working as hard as you can up to, you know, right before fight week. And then that's when you taper off. You're going to be burnt out. You're going to feel terrible. You probably peaked 2 weeks ago, and now you're just on the decline, rather than building for 6 weeks and tapering for 2 weeks. And then you're just ready to go as soon as it's time to fight. And yeah.
Yeah, man, exactly. And like, I love what you said too about like, as we're at like keeping your mind on, how you're feeling while you're sparring. Cause I think for anybody, it's like that is the best way to really put it across is like, if you're feeling good when you're fighting, and like, again, not just I made it through, but like I was sharp, I was technical, I was fast through the whole 10 rounds or 12 rounds or whatever you're doing. It's like, if you can feel that week in and week out, then you are doing enough, because that is
Hmm.
the goal. Like, the goal is not to be the guy who can do 35 rounds. The goal is the guy who can to be the guy who can push the pace for the 3, or in your case now 5 rounds that you need to push for the most.
Hmm.
And it's like, you can push 10 rounds hard in sparring and feel sharp and technical and good week in and week out. You can push 3 in a fight and you're going to be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not about how many rounds you can push yourself through. Because if you're tough and, if you're fighting MMA or any combat sport, you're probably tough. Anybody can make their way through 10 rounds, 15 rounds. You can do it. You can get to the last round, but if every round is just you looking for a place to rest and recover and then you're just getting beat up, and that's every other round until you find that one guy that sucks and you can have a rest round on him, like that's not training, that's not sparring, that's not being in shape. If you just make it through that you're not in shape, I mean, you're probably in some sort of shape, but you're not improving, you're not ready to fight if it's just muddling your way through round after round, trying to just catch your breath the whole time, and then you gotta maybe step things up a
Oh,
little bit.
I think we
But
lost you.
hello?
I think we're back. I think we're back.
I think so, yeah.
You were just right in the middle of absolute gold
Oh.
when that froze on me. Oh, are you frozen? Oh, no, I think you're back. Maybe.
Oh,
Uh,
I think you're freezing. I don't.
How
One of
about the
us is
internet?
freezing.
I think I got you. Hello.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're good.
Yeah, you were just in the middle of some absolute gold right when that froze up on
Oh,
me. So
I
I'm
don't know.
going to
Something
get you
about
to
if you have
talk
to
through
muddle your
that.
way through 10 rounds, you're not in shape. If you're looking for rest the whole time, if you're just trying to catch your breath, you gotta. You know that something's up. You gotta
Our
change.
connection
Oh
is not good.
no. Um,
Our connection's terrible. I'm not sure what happened there. It's like, it seems to be. Are we, hello?
hello.
Yeah, I got you.
Oh.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Oh. Uh, uh,
Good.
I think so.
Do you hear me?
Oh, I do hear you. Your screen keeps freezing. Probably
Okay.
the same from your end.
Yeah, I mean, it's the exact opposite on this side.
Yeah.
You keep freezing on me. Think I got you back now? Yeah. Hello?
Yeah. Hello.
Good.
Yeah, I think we're good. Oh.
All right, I think we're good too. I'm gonna get you to go through that one more time, because then when I actually go to I'm gonna edit this whole fun chunk out. So apologize for anybody that's listening live. So you're just talking about the difference between basically, the guys who actually stay sharp through sparring versus the guys who are, just making it through 15 rounds, basically just checking the box, but like always kind of looking for rest and everything through it. I'll let you just pick that back up,
Right.
and yeah, we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, if you're doing 10 rounds and you muddling your way through all the rounds and just trying to find the moment to catch your breath, the moment to stop just shelling up and taking punishment, then if that's what you're doing every time you're sparring, you get like one or two good rounds, and then you're just totally kind of just on autopilot survival mode, then you got to change something about your training up, because there's guys that when you're sparring, you can see it in their eyes. If they're sharp and they're making reads on what you're doing, that's when you're like, you better hope that you're still feeling good. Because if you see someone and they're feeling good and they can tell you're not feeling good and they're making reads on what you're doing, you're about to have a bad 5 minutes. So, yeah.
Yeah, And I mean, I love that you mentioned that specifically. And like, mainly, I love it because, again, there's a very big difference between checking the box and saying, I did my 10 rounds and actually having 10 good rounds. And it's like, it's the same thing as, the work we do too, right? It's like, there's a difference between I did my workout today and I actually focused on trying to make the improvements that we're trying to make that are going to translate back to the sport. Like, and that intentionality is something I know I talk about so much, but also still gets me those fun comments on TikTok about me telling people not to work hard when I tell them not to do 1,000 reps of everything.
Yeah.
And
TikTok just knows so much.
oh yeah, TikTok coaches are my favorite ones in that respect. But it just like it I love hearing you say that because honestly, man, like from the time working with athletes, and I know I've said this to you before, but I'm going to reinforce it again. Like that mindset of like actually doing things the right way versus just doing more and flexing on everybody about how tough you are and how many rounds you can go or whatever else you want to say. Like that is one of the big like good to great differences in athletes.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
speaking of as well, one thing that I wanted to touch on with you, because I've always admired it since we started working together, is just like your mindset around fighting. Because, as you know from being in that world, there is a lot of ego in MMA and, just like fighting as a whole. And there's a lot of that mentality of just trying to outwork everybody, trying to do the most rounds, do the hardest workout, do this, do that. And what I've always admired about you is that, again, your focus is on the process more than it is on any of that. Like you never give me the impression that you're out here to prove anything to anyone but yourself. And it's just a very admirable quality to be around, especially as a coach who works with high level athletes. Can you talk me through like how did that mentality kind of develop in you and just day to day how you kind of approach the sport as a whole, training and like your career?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I the guys that you see who they feel like it's their life goal to post on Instagram about all their workouts, the only reason you know that they work so hard is because they let you know. There's nothing in the gym that shows that they're working extra hard. They're not showing up with, the most like Colby Covington cardio or anything. They're showing up and just like everybody else, maybe a little better, maybe a little worse. But when it comes to just flexing on everybody with your workouts, like, oh, look what I just it's Christmas Day and I hit the gym. Just want you to know that, like, post gym selfie, Christmas Day. I'm working when you're not working. You have a holiday. I don't have holidays. I just grind. Like those guys, they're never special in the gym. Not that they suck by any means, but there's never that special quality about them that like, oh, you got that extra workout in that I missed. Man, that guess you're just that much better than the rest of us. That the only reason you know that they work hard is because they let you know. But with everybody else, if you're able to just be consistent, you have days off, you have days on. Oh,
Yeah.
did we freeze again? Oh, I think we're good.
No,
Yeah.
very briefly, very briefly.
Yeah, the people that are convinced you can never have a day off, and if you're training with them, they rage all the time. Maybe they get submitted, and it's the biggest deal, and they're angry, and they're like, after they get beat up, they got to go take their frustrations out on the white belts, and you just got to go prove how tough they are. And like, if you're tough, it'll show when you fight. If you're not tough, it'll show too. If the proven in the gym doesn't mean anything. Nobody cares about how many rounds you can do in the gym, how tough you are. If your ego is in the gym, it's going to be hard when you get in the cage.
Yeah, man. And I mean, I think that's the perfect way to say it is like, if you're tough, it'll show while you fight. And if you're not tough, it'll show while you fight. Because it's just like, again, being a guy who runs business and primarily runs it through social media, like I have no problem with people posting about their training or anything like that. But it's like, that is the big difference though, is the difference between Are you just posting to, oh yeah, I'm working out on Christmas
Hmm.
Day, look at me, or are you actually doing the things that are going to lead to you fighting at your best?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's that thing that, if I can put that to anybody listening, that's the difference you need to find within yourself. Because, yeah, some people might compliment you on how hard you work or whatever, but anybody that actually matters, like your teammates or people that you're going to fight, aren't going to be scared by the fact that you train 7 days a week, or aren't going to be scared by the fact that you were, in the gym on Christmas Day when these other
Hmm.
pussies were at home with their families. Like,
Yeah.
uh, it's like they're going to care about how you show up on the day of the fight.
Hmm. Everybody
I,
knows when people are about to fight, in the back, everyone you train with, in the back of their minds, they're gonna know what's probably gonna happen. If you've trained with someone long enough, you you kind of get an idea about what's gonna happen in the cage if something goes wrong. Is there's people that they'll flex on Instagram about how tough they are, how they got that dog in them, and how they'll fight through anything. They'll die before they quit. They usually aren't the ones that are gonna do that. They're usually the ones that are gonna get get in a bad spot, and then the ref is gonna have to come in pretty quick because they just die.
they died, they didn't quit.
Yeah, they just lay there and like, oh, they had a bad weight cut. Like, maybe you should work with people to help you with that.
What? Yeah, man. I love that mentality, and I wanted to make sure I touched on it because, like, I think that's a huge part of first why you've seen the success already that you've seen in your pro career, but also why, like, as a coach, you can tell when athletes have something different. Like, you can tell when athletes, there's hard workers, there's the people who, want to show that they're a hard worker but aren't. And then there's people that just have something different. And like right from the first time working together, like I could tell there's something just different about how you approach things, different about how you train, but also like, little things that always stick out to me are like, I have a lot of athletes, and this isn't, trying to take a shot at anybody, but I have a lot of athletes that they'll tell me like, "Oh, I'm busy on Wednesday, so I won't train." Whereas like with you, it's, "Hey, I can't make it to our regular time on Wednesday, so can I get in and like grab the key and come do the session on my own first thing in the morning?" Like you're always finding a way. Like there's no like, "Oh, I can't do it." It's, I can't do it at this time, so I'm going to figure out when I can do it so that I don't miss it. And it's like that mindset is again that little good to great, you know, I might have a few wins as a pro versus I'm going to actually make it to wherever I want to make it. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, there's never anything wrong with taking rest, taking days off. Like the days that I'll take the day off before, and then you show up for training the next day. Those are usually your best days. Those are the days where you're like, man, I feel 200% right now. I slept for 12 hours yesterday. I ate extra food. I'm just ready to go. Those are going to be your best days. But if that's all the time, if it's always something coming up, like if you're going to be fighting soon, things usually don't get to come up. This is you already have something happening. You're busy. Your plans, your schedule's full. You got to be at the gym, and then you got to be at the gym again. You can take time off. You can see your friends, see your family, but really, when it comes down to it, but if you're fighting in 4 weeks, maybe you'll see them in 4 weeks. Like maybe you got Sunday off or something, or Saturday off. Maybe you'll see them on Saturday. Maybe you'll do something then. But if you're especially with when I'm coming to see you, we're seeing each other twice a week. I'm not gonna be like, oh, I got plans, so I can't do that. I'll see him next week. Then, I'll just take all this extra time off, and like you probably have the time to even do both. Like maybe you're gonna be a little extra busy, but you're gonna go to the gym, then you're gonna do whatever your other plans are too. And if people really want, they can make time. But
Yeah.
if
And,
they
and
want
I
to
mean,
just relax,
yeah. And I mean, I want to like reiterate that because I think it's a very good point, but we like kind of went through it very quickly. Is like if you have a fight in 4 weeks, things don't get to come up. Like this is the thing. And it's like that again is that good to great mentality, right? It's like you can rely on your skill alone and just like, oh yeah, I'm good, I'll be fine. It's like, but how badly do you want it and how good do you want to be is the question you got to ask yourself. And it's like, and if you truly want to be at your best, how many times can you skip training today because something popped up? Like, no, that can't keep happening. And even if you got through your last couple of fights, skipping training here and there, you're going to hit that level where you're facing that guy that's just as good as you are and isn't skipping training sessions. And then that's when you're in for a very bad night.
Hmm. Yeah, there's when you're about to fight, you're gonna be thinking about all those sessions you missed. And even if you missed one session, or you literally best training camp of your life, in the back of your mind you're going to be thinking, did I train enough for this? Am I actually in shape for this? Like, your mind is just going to be full of self-doubt right before you fight. And then if you really did skip all those sessions and you were going out with your friends all the time and you're just missing sessions, then you have no you have nothing to kind of convince yourself of, because it's all lies. If you did train hard and you're feeling self-doubt, then you can be like, no, I did. I know I trained hard for this. But then if you really were just slacking off, then you're gonna be sitting in the back room about to walk out, and you're gonna be like, man, I wish I showed up to the gym all those times. I wish I didn't take it easy. I wish I just made a little extra time so I could have made those sessions.
Yeah, man. And I mean, that's huge because that's something that, like, I love that you put it that way too about like self doubt. Because I speak with athletes every single day, and that is honestly one of the most common things that come up is people tell me, like, when I ask, like, where do you struggle? One of the most common answers is self doubt. Like, I know that I work hard and I'm confident that I can do it, but I just like I come into fights and I just like don't feel myself, or like I'm not sure. And then 9 times out of 10, when you dig a little deeper, oh yeah, I train hard, but like, I sometimes I kind of skip, or I don't do it as much as I should, and you always kind of figure out where that self doubt comes from. But it's like, with people like you don't, and not that you won't ever feel self doubt, but like you're able to work through that a lot faster because you can just turn back and say, I did every training session. I showed up every time. I gave it everything I had. I took rest days when I needed to, not when I didn't feel like going. And so, yeah, no, I'm good. I don't need to worry about whether I'm ready or not because I am.
Hmm. For sure. It's really, when you're about to fight, having confidence, even false confidence, is pretty important. If you go in there feeling like you're about to get beat up, then you probably will. But if you're able to just kind of go in there, even false confidence of believing that you're the absolute greatest there's ever been, and that's not true, but you're going in there with the feeling like that's gonna improve your ability a lot, or just your willingness to throw things and do certain things. If you're feeling like, man, I missed all those conditioning sessions, I don't know if I can finish this guy right now, I might be too tired. And
And for anybody who might be doubting anything that John's saying, go look up his last fights on YouTube and you'll quickly stop doubting this man's word because he has a gas tank like nobody I've seen at 185 pounds. And it's just like, it's honestly fun to watch. Like, you throw people around and do it easily. Like, it's so much fun to sit back and just watch you do that time and time again. But I think this is a really good place to wrap things up. And one thing I wanted to ask you, though, just as a little bit of a random question at the end, is looking back at your career so far, is there anything that you know now that you wish you could have known earlier to, like, fast track the success you've been able to see, or something that you wish could go back and tell John about to make his debut to help him out?
mhm. I think the biggest things is when I hired you and when I hired TJ, because if you're fighting, you're obviously training, so you probably got that down. Maybe finding a better gym, because sometimes people get sucked into the community of a gym, and maybe it's not actually a very good gym, and you just kind of you feel like you're trapped. But besides finding the perfect gym for yourself, which who can really do that, is the fights that I lost as an amateur. If I had better conditioning and I was fueled going into them, I don't know if I necessarily would have lost, or maybe I would have lost less bad. Maybe I would have still lost, but I would have felt better doing it. But though you and TJ were by far just being able to perform, that was the biggest thing. Is it doesn't matter how good you are if you can't perform when you need to. And that was I wish I hired TJ sooner. I wish I started working with you sooner, and I think that would have been a big change for my amateur time.
Dude, obviously makes me super happy to hear that. And like, for any fighters out there too, like keep that in mind, because if you're coming into fights and you're not feeling your best, or even if you're coming into fights and you're feeling good, when you have those moments in the fight of like, do I have the gas to be able to do this? Or those little self-doubt moments in the back, it's like there are ways to work around that, like you've heard in this episode. So John, I appreciate you taking the time. This has been awesome.
Thank
I
you.
always get something good out of talking to you, so this is just that much better. And then, where do people find you? Like, obviously, you're a young up and coming prospect. I know there are going to be a lot of potential sponsors that want to get along this journey with you. Where can people find you? And yeah,
Yeah.
give me a little
If you
more.
wanna find me, I'm on Instagram, John_Moore99. If you have any questions, if you're a sponsor and you want to give me cool stuff, I love that. Just send me a message. Yeah, just follow me on Instagram. That helps me out a lot. Thanks for having me on. This has been fun.
Yeah, man, absolutely. All right, everybody. I appreciate everybody who tuned in live, whether you're listening back on the podcast, watching back on the YouTube channel, whatever it is. Make sure that you're following me. Make sure that you're going over and you're following John. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. I appreciate you all, and we'll talk again soon.